Do you have a question, Austin?
I was gonna say I'm not trying to be like stingy, but it just says introduce yourselves at the beginning and make sure it's in gallery view just to get those points.
Yeah. So we'll go through and introduce ourselves real quick. So I'll start us off.
Okay,
you're good,
hold
man.
on 1 second, guys. Sorry, hold on. I'm gonna pause the recording. All right.
All right, perfect. All right. I'll start us off. My name is Tanner. I don't know what else we should go through. Just kind of like where we're from. I'm originally from Colorado. Here in Hawaii right now, and hopefully this class turns out really good, and we have a good time. So whoever wants to go next, go for it.
I'm Abby. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I'm also in La right now. And I'm also excited for this class.
My name is Austin Ford. I'm born and raised in Hong Kong, right now living in Hawaii. I've taken one of my brother Schaefer's classes, not to brown nose or anything, but I liked it enough to take another one of them. And excited for the class.
I think this is like his last semester too.
Oh, sweet.
My name's Mike. Born and raised here in La. I had his class before too. I really liked it. So yeah, excited. Excited for the class, and hopefully we can get through it.
We'll get through it. We got this. All
One
right,
way
guys.
or another.
Just the four of us, right?
I like how are we all in Laie right now? Is that yeah?
So.
Yeah.
I like how we're all in the same neighborhood. It was just over Zoom. That's hilarious. Anyway, let me kick off the discussion. Okay, I've heard about this book, right? So many times. Whenever anybody talks to me about like anything related to Kickstarters or personal finance or anything like that, they're like, "Hey, Austin, you gotta read Who Moved My Cheese." And like after 2 years later, I finally read it, and I liked it. Honestly, my overall view was, I was like, this is totally relatable. I'm always like so complacent with where I am until I need to go, and then I go do it. But anyway, what do you guys? Has anybody told you guys to read this book before, or is that just me?
I've never had anyone tell me to
No,
read.
this is my first time even.
Go ahead, Tanner.
Go ahead. Sorry. I was gonna say, yeah, I've never even heard of the book until just recently. Just like as soon as he was like, "Who moved this cheese?" I was really expecting just kind of this like kind of a quirky kind of storybook that was like kind of dumb, to be honest. So I was kind of skeptical going into it. I was like, all right, here we go. What about everybody?
Yeah, when I first saw the title of the story, I wasn't very enthusiastic about it. No pun intended, but I thought it was kind of cheesy. But once I read it, it made sense, and I can relate to a lot of the conversations that were taking place, meeting up with classmates. I'm probably a lot older than you guys are. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I've already had a lot of these conversations with my friends, where we're at in life, what we're doing, what changed. So yeah, I enjoyed it because I was able to relate to it in a lot of ways, and my friends as well were able to. I can definitely tell that if they were to read it, they'd be able to relate to it too. So it's a very it's a funny thing, right? A maze and cheese, but very, very relatable to what our life is like right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I went into reading this book with kind of no expectations at all. I was like, it's a book that we're reading for a class, so it has to be informational. And it was actually pretty entertaining while informational. And I was able to learn a lot because I'm not quite at your stage yet, Mike. So I'm still have things to learn before I get there. And I think it will be really influential for the future. to have the positive outlook that they're trying to give you from reading this book. Some of my favorite things were that the quotes that they wrote on the wall with the cheese, because even though it was like a tiny human searching for cheese, they were actually like helpful. And it's something that I know that I can apply to my own life in the future.
Yeah, the quotes were phenomenal. Like there was so many like little quotes and like parts of the like phrases that he gave that I was like, man, I wish I would have heard this like several years ago, or like this would have been a good quote to use a long time ago. I
It's
think the
funny.
cool
I was.
thing, like with
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
the all, yeah, go ahead.
No,
No, no,
no.
no.
Keep going. Keep
I was
going.
just gonna say the author himself. Uh, so with the author, I was like looking into him a little bit. Like at the beginning of the book, it even states that like the reason why he wrote this book was to be able to laugh at himself, to not take things so serious, or to take himself so serious, but to take situations serious. And I thought that was really cool that he basically wrote this entire story just so he had something to laugh at, basically.
Well, going along those lines, because this class is about leadership, right? And one way or another, we're all leaders in our own little capacities. And I love like what you guys are talking about. Like you gotta laugh at yourself, and unless you can see like, I mean, anything we do, even like this meeting, for example, we could probably find something to laugh about. Until like we're able to do that, I mean, it's just, we're not going to move with the cheese, I guess is the final quote. Funny story, I kind of got annoyed with the quotes keep coming. I was like, why does this guy have so much time to write on the wall? Like this is and then I had to stop taking it so seriously. And but yeah, that was probably one of my biggest takeaways is was the old belief system. And one of the things I wrote down was I didn't write it down, but I came to my mind was the Marriott's mission statement. And the Marriott's mission statement has to do with point blank, they're just saying, we believe in, customers come first, blah, 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 employees and stuff. But they also say we believe in moving and changing constantly. And so I was just like, they must apply this book or vice versa. But yeah, I mean, I just thought it was laugh at yourself. I was like, that's wonderful.
So the most, or not the most important part, but one of the most influential parts of this book is how each character reacts to the changes that are occurring. And so we have Sniff and Scurry, right, which are the mice, motivated by cheese, really good at finding it, notice when things are happening. And then we have Hem and Haw, who don't look around and end up stuck without the cheese. In your own lives, what person or character in this book do you think that you can relate with the most?
I think the cool part about, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm Ha. And I say that because I think he went through like a learning process. The other three were just described as, this is who they are, this is what they do. But I think Ha, he had a little bit of all of them within him. He was afraid to move. Eventually, he began to move. He was able to envision himself in, at another cheese station. I mean, he was able to change along the way, adapt, and then actually reach his goal. And so for me, that's how I feel. I feel like I've gone through that process where I've gotten comfortable. And then there's times where I felt I was a little too comfortable, afraid to change. But then you know what? After taking a few steps, you get a little bit more brave and less afraid. And that just leads you to, bigger doors, bigger opportunities. So I think I am definitely Ha.
That's really cool. I was thinking a lot about like kind of the last kind of section of the book where they all kind of like were like reviewing each of the characters kind of and talking about themselves. And at the end, I really think they preference that like we all have parts in our lives where we're each one of them. Some days we're very motivated, like Scurry, where we just up and go and we can go for it. And then some days we're like Sniff, where we're a little more cautious, but we sniff out the cheese. And then some days we're Him, where we have to grow and basically just try to figure it out, but we never do. And then sometimes we're Ha, where we actually change slowly but surely. But I really think the story itself preferences that I think we're all like Ha at some point. I really like the fact that, you know, it kind of turned into more of Ha's story than it did like about any other character, because it kind of shows the metamorphosis of an individual character into something that like we all should be more like.
I agree with that. You know, I think 90% of people would say they're Ha. I mean, that was, again, I feel like it was the story of Ha. But just looking at his thought process, he just honestly just overthought everything. And it was kind of frustrating to think about. And then I looked back and I was like, I overthink everything when I'm about to do something, even as, you know, as small as something like, you know, buying a bag of chips. I gotta like overanalyze which one's heavier than the other and which one's a better deal, when in reality I could just pick one up and go. I thought that was a really influential point, because I don't think the author was really saying, you know, who was bad and who was good. You know, they all have their own merits and faults in their own way. But when I was looking at Ha and you know, small things like when he went somewhere and he thought of his buddy, you know, I was like, yeah, like that's such a normal human reaction. Like when we see something good, we want to share it with other people, you know, like Lehi's dream or and things like that. And I was like, yeah, that's really relatable. And I would want to stop and think, and I would doubt, like, oh, I don't know, or I'd get excited about certain things, and then I'd hit a dead end, like when he went into one of those tunnels or one of those stations, and there was no cheese at the end with the crumbs. I thought it was oddly, well, it was very relatable, and I think that probably resonated with me the most, was the part of overthinking, but in a way it wasn't bad because it led to something good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Austin. You really have to look at the times in your life while not overthinking, but while thinking through decisions, how it can influence you for the better. So he really overthought the idea of leaving. And that's an idea he kind of should have realized from the beginning that he should have just gone with. He should have gone and left and tried to find new cheese, because he was going to die. He was going to be without food, without everything that he needed and what he wanted there at Cheese Station C. But the other decisions that he could have thought more about, what could he have done to get his friend to leave, or what path should he take, or how should he leave a marker in order to know where he's going, and overthink, oh, what should I do in the future to better myself? So there's times where really thinking through what you're going to do is really influential and can help you a ton, but there's also times where it can really hold you back from where you need to go. Like buying a bag of chips, like you said, you might not need to think through that very hard, but picking another thing might be what you need to think through. And I also agree that 90% of us are going to say that we're Ha, because we're all trying to make those changes to better ourselves over time. But personally, I think before the past 2 years, I was definitely a Hem. Like I was so negative. I never wanted anything to change. I was very stuck in my ways. But I've had people pull me through. I've had Sniffs and Scurries and Haws come into my life that really have pulled me in the direction of change can be a positive thing if you let it be a positive thing. Change can make your life better and make you grow as an individual. But before the past 2, 3 years, I was definitely not okay with it. And I see now how influential and important it has been in my life to accept this change. And I'm still progressing and trying to get better, but I'm becoming a Ha over time.
I think that's cool how like you like notice that like you have like your like sniffs and scaries in your life. I think that was something that I didn't feel like they highlighted enough is that Sniff and Scurry were always together. They were always a partner. They were always a team, and they relied on each other. Like where Sniff would smell out the cheese, Scurry would run off to go find it. They were always like a group. They never really were ever by themselves. And I thought that was really interesting because I think that's how a lot of us kind of need help. Sniff and Scurry, they did well because I think they had each other for the most part. I think if we separated the two, they wouldn't have done near as well as they did, because they both had their advantages, and so they helped each other out a lot. And then with him and Ha, you notice that instead of like the two mouths that like lifting each other up, they kind of bounced each other's negatives opinions off of each other a lot of the times. Like when him was like trying to like convince Ha that he shouldn't go, Ha was encouraged by him so many times not to go. And then on top of that, I wonder like how often they both kind of sat there and like grumbled and whined about it. And so I think it's really interesting that like the two were always put together. And then when him and Ha finally split up is when Ha finally like started like kind of coming to his own. And I think that's how like a lot of things happen is sometimes we have to let go of certain people or certain things to keep moving forward or find the right people like Sniff and Scurry did to keep building each other up. So I thought that was a very interesting dynamic.
Or even just the courage to let people go, in the sense of him and Ha's relationship. And I'm just thinking a little bit about the follow-up question for this discussion with how it relates to HTM. I mean, it's not going to be a fairy tale ending if you want to progress. Sometimes you don't end with the people that you start with, and that's something that was realized at the end of the story. Was you can warn, you can pull, you can literally try to pull people with you, and it just might not happen. And in order to progress, you have to maintain that mindset. Not everybody can be Sniff and Scurry. A lot of times we're going to be more like him and Ha, where our negatives don't bounce off each other. Just you gotta, and I think that's the hard part. I think that's really hard because I think about things like my mission where I couldn't really dump my companion, so I kind of had to do a Sniff and Scurry, and I had to deal with it. But now that I'm not, I've had a few more hem and haw moments where I had to, not literally, but kind of a little bit distance myself from certain people to get to where I need to be. So that's a really good point, Tanner. Thanks for bringing that up.
All right, looks like we're getting somebody in here. As soon as he hops in, we'll just pause real quick and then we'll have him introduce himself. Hey, Bittner, how you doing, man? Hey, do you want to introduce yourself real quick before we keep going on the conversation?
Yeah. All right, let me just turn on my light. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Bittner Lamita. I'm from Samoa. I am 20 years of age. This is my third year. I graduate next year. I am majoring in information technology and minoring in HTM and Pacific Island Studies.
Cool. Hey,
Nice.
Bittner. My name's Austin, by the way. We're in the same boat. I got another year.
Perfect. And I'm Tanner. Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit of the same, a little less, but another semester for me.
My name is Mike.
I'm Abby, and I'm going to go ahead and pull us back into the conversation we were just having. Bittner, to bring you back to speed, we were just talking about how in our lives we all have sniffs and scurries that are going to try and pull us ahead, and we need to really gravitate towards those people. But there's also going to be hems and haws, and we need to do our best to notice that those people are in our lives. And I was just thinking about how could we relate that back to the HTM industry? And I was thinking, we always have those businesses that we see who are always competing with each other, whether it be like Marriott and the Hilton or United Airlines and Southwest. Like those are the people that are competing against each other, and they're sniffing scurries in each other's lives. They're really making changes to their own businesses to progress and um, bring customers to their company. And we need to be that for each other at work. We need to see what changes we can make to ourselves to benefit the company more and not hold each other back because we're being lazy or not open to change.
Yeah, I really like that. I thought it was really interesting that like it kind of got that up. We like at the end of the kind of the book, it talks with like when everybody was like talking about like their hard times and how that one gentleman he talked about how in his life or in his business he had the four individuals and how he had to let go of a lot of the hymns because they just wouldn't change, and that because of them not changing, it dragged his business down. It was affecting his business and it was hurting what he was doing. And I think that's something that, you know, as we move forward in this business, we're going to have to look for those people that are those hymns so that we can kind of base our lives not like them and see how we can be better than what they're doing so we don't like necessarily drag our business down.
Um, so a little bit off topic, but I just got a gift from Zoom that they removed the 40-minute time limit, so we don't have to stress out too much about that. But yeah, just you know, what you shared, Tanner, what you shared, Abby, very true. I've been lucky enough to be working. Right now, I work at Turtle Bay Resort, and they're going under a big renovation right now from their new owners. And the renovation isn't just physical. You've heard the word transformational in this chapter that we read. And that's what's happening as well with regards to services offered, just everything. And so this, looking over the reservation, being a part of a lot of these meetings, we're seeing that you know, I can relate this story to what's happening. There's changes in what consumers want, changes with the kind of experiences that we want, and we're trying to plan, you know, how do we execute that? How do we live up to their expectations, and how do we, just the reality of a business, how do we make a profit? How do we secure a profit? And what it is developing experiences that our customers want and over delivering. And so with expectations and what our consumers want, you got to make sure that the people that provide that service are at that level as well. So things do happen where, um, you know, if people don't want to change, how do you kind of push them to change? Whether it's policies, accountability, disciplinary action, there's a lot of ways. There were a lot of hems in the team, but they definitely learned to become haws, and they understand now it's just the nature of business. It's the nature of the industry. You need to adapt, you need to change, and you really need to listen to the people that you serve to understand what they want. Um, Sniff and Scurry, they were very good at that. They were, you notice a lot of times they said they didn't put away their shoes. They kept their shoes around their neck and they were ready to move if they had to. They made sure they were prepared and they kept an eye on, you know, whatever these little indicators were that, hey, is the cheese running out? Is it growing mold or whatever? So they anticipated and they were actively looking for those small indicators. And if they had the sign that they needed to move or change, they had their shoes ready to go. You know, they had a plan in place to find something else. So
just to tag right behind Mike what you said, I worked at Turtle Bay for a little bit, with different capacities, and one of them was driving. I was shuttling airport up to the resort, and I was able to shuttle some of the executives for Turtle Bay during that time. And relating back to the book, I thought it was really interesting when Hem and Haw identified Sniff and Scurry as mice. And in a way, they kind of looked down on them and they said, you know, like, we're little people and we should be able to think and act better than Sniff and Scurry. But in reality, Sniff and Scurry had better ideas and were more proactive in finding the cheese. During that shuttle ride, I shuttled them kind of around the island. They would ask me questions and they wanted to know my opinion. And one of the things that I just saw recently, because I drove past Turtle Bay, was they changed the sign in front of the resort. And I remember distinctively having that conversation with them. And I was like, you know, it's so weird. You know, you have this huge resort, but with such a tiny sign that's barely lit. And it was just kind of cool. I'm not taking credit for the sign. Maybe I should, but I thought it was really neat. Like something we talked about. In my case, I feel like a little mouse in their scenario, but they didn't look down on me like how in the book Hem and Haw did with Sniff and Scurry, and they took other people's ideas, even though they were little people, smaller than the little people. Anyway, Mike, just to your point, I thought that was pretty cool that T-Bay's doing that.
Now we know who the guy was that got that sign changed. That's good to know. Good to know who it was. So, but no, yeah, we're just talking about like just different things about the book. We're not on one particular question. Yeah, I thought going off of like with how they were using like their shoes around their neck. I thought that was really interesting to me, how no matter what the scenario was, is they were always ready for it. No matter who they were talking to, no matter what they were going to talk to, they were always ready for whatever was happening. And I thought that was really interesting that they made that point several times. And then eventually when Haw gets there to the to Station Inn, he does the exact same thing. And then the other mice, both the mice basically kind of like laugh. You know, they're like, oh yeah, we've been doing that. But instead of like discouraging him or not even like acknowledging him, they actually like kind of like, you know, hung out with him for a bit and supported him. And I think that's like with us, like if we have like a company or a business that we see somebody who's struggling to change, we don't want to discourage them from changing. We need to support them like Sniff and Scurry did. Like, okay, like, yes, you're having a hard time with this, but we're not going to laugh at you. We're going to like, you know, be friends with you. Even though it took you 9 months to get here, you're still here. You're still with us. And that's what counts. That's what matters.
Yeah, I really like that, Tanner. I think it's so important that when we see people changing and progressing and bettering themselves, we can celebrate that with them. Like we don't have to talk down on them or like make them feel bad because they didn't feel like that in the beginning, like they didn't want to change, but we can always find a way to hype them up and celebrate with them because it will make them want to change in the future. And they might be the ones to think of the great ideas later that we're going to have to adapt and change to. Like Mike or Austin mentioned, you never know who's going to be the one to make these big changes. And so you just need to be open to everyone's ideas.
Yeah. And just, you know, that example you shared, Austin, it's a good indicator of the kind of leaders that are at the top of the hospitality industry. I don't think those kind of conversations are insignificant in any way. That's just kind of part of what they do. They reach out to people, they reach out to employees, and you know, I think in that kind of setting, you know, they take advantage of the opportunity. They find out what this person, you know, what they, you know, what their view is about certain things, because that is that is what you have to do. You have to listen to the people you serve, not just your customers, but your employees as well, because your employees give you, they'll let you know what they need, whatever they need, they feel to be successful, things that they need to provide service. And a lot of employees, they do come up with fantastic ideas, and that is just the kind of culture that exists right now, is that we kind of you build this company together, with you have leaders, you have employees, and again, just listening and adapting to change. So yeah, I'm definitely grateful to have read this story, and really just it was funny, but there's a lot of truth in it.
Bender, what was something that stuck out to you, my friend?
Oh, yeah, so I agree with all you guys said, but one of the things that I think the tourism industry should apply is to predict themselves of being successful, and also like move on and never look back, because most of the business here, they're struggling with um, different kind of problems, such as monetary uh, competition. And the things they should do is to always move on and try new things and experience, and also learn from their mistakes. And some of the things that I learned from the book as well is to overcome your challenges. And the things that one of the mice did, or both of the mice, is they overcame their challenges and they felt good, and they never felt afraid as well. And also, what else? Oh yeah, also one of the things from the book is to be strong from your fears, never be afraid, and just move forward and try new things. Yeah, that's one of my thoughts.
The old quote, old belief does not lead you to new cheese, is what comes to mind when you say that, Bittner. I think it's pretty neat because when COVID first hit, hospitality is the first to go in any type of really any type of crisis. And it was funny because during that time, I was like, I just was like, I need to find some way to capitalize on COVID. Not, it's a horrible scenario, and I really don't like being in COVID, but you got to think to yourself, how am I going to come back and bounce back, instead of just sitting there and waiting to get, feeling all depressed, I can't do anything. And it was interesting because during that time I was trying to start my own tour operating business, and I was working on some contracts with different people. And I was talking to these business owners because I wanted to incorporate some local business owners, and everybody was so negative and they were so down. And everybody was just saying, COVID's shutting us down, we're going to move. And it just didn't feel like there was much energy within the hospitality industry when something hit. And just kind of playing off Bittner's point, like, and what we've been talking about, it's just sometimes it's so hard within hospitality to look up because so many people look down whenever there's a crisis. And I think that's a point that made me realize a little more with this book, is that, again, my favorite quote is move with the cheese and enjoy it. Is you got to shut out all the other influences, and you just got to move with the cheese. That's got to be the priority. And I think that is huge for hospitality, because there's going to be a new trend. Isolation travel is huge now. Supporting local businesses when you travel is huge. And not a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people don't actually think that's significant, but unless you follow those things and you got the shoes around your neck and you're ready to run, you're going to get left behind. You're going to get depressed about where you are, and you're just going to sit there with no cheese. in my opinion.
Yeah, I also really love that quote, especially when he kind of says it to himself, like, "Why didn't I get up and move with the cheese sooner?" Like, I think about that a lot. Like, do I sit around and like often think like, "Oh, did I miss my opportunity?" Am I one of those people that sits there and goes, "Oh, COVID sucks and I can't do anything with COVID," or am I one of those people that overthink, like, overthinks it and I just complain about it? And then when he says, "Why didn't I get up and move with the cheese sooner?" That really hit home. It's because it's like, how often have I done that in my own life? Like, man, why didn't I do that sooner? Why didn't I, apply to that class faster? Why didn't I, start my work sooner? Why didn't I, apply for that business loan earlier? Why didn't I do certain things? And I don't want to be that anymore, because like I think Ha at the end was like, you know what, I'm done being the person who doesn't move with the cheese. And I think that's how we all should be. Like we shouldn't have to look back on our lives and be like, why didn't I do something sooner? When we should be saying, I'm glad I did this with this. I'm glad I moved with the cheese because now I'm tasting new cheese. I'm tasting, the different flavors of the cheese. So I think it's really cool that that quote kind of highlighted the whole kind of scenario on how change at first seems scary, but we don't want to be the people that go, oh, I wish I would have moved with change.
I really like that, Tanner. I think it really shows us that we need to do self-assessments like ever so often so that we make sure that we're not turning into him and being the person who sits there and doesn't realize that change is happening. And it's the same thing that businesses can do in the HTM industry. If they do like business assessments every month, 2 months, they can see what other businesses are doing to attract people and how they can better themselves to progress in the industry and not stay stuck and like lose their interest over a while because people aren't going to like a business that isn't making the changes and being interesting, you know?
So do we think we covered just about everything, or?
I think so. I think
Okay.
we had a decent discussion here.
It's a good discussion. All right. I'm gonna stop the recording.